Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Legal Mastermind Podcast. Today, we have two special guests, and we're going to go through the process of starting your own law firm. So, this should be interesting for anybody who's working at big law or for a law firm with somebody else's name on the door who's really looking to start up their own law firm. My first guest is Dana DiRaimondo, who is the founding partner of DiRaimondo and Schroeder. And I also have with me Shireen Hillal, who is the founder and CEO of Mayor Consultants. Welcome to the Legal Mastermind Podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So, Dana, I'd like to start off a little bit about your background in your other life when you were working at big legal and how that process went, and really take us through that time frame when you decided to go out on your own and move on to starting and co-founding a law firm.
Sure. I remember it like it was yesterday, even though it's coming up on 10 years. My partner and co-founder and I were attorneys at the world's biggest business immigration law firm. At that point, I had no aspirations of ever working anywhere else. I was a summer associate there. I stayed on as a law clerk during law school, and then got hired as an associate right out of law school. I graduated in 2009, which I'm sure everyone remembers was a tough time to be looking for your first job. So I was incredibly grateful to be there. I felt like I grabbed the brass ring. I landed at exactly where I thought I wanted to be when I was in law school. And several years went by, and there was just this sort of niggling sense in the back of my mind that there was a better way to do it. And what I mean by that is a better way to service the types of clients that my partner and I were servicing while at that firm, which specializes in giant Fortune 50, 100, 500 companies. And we had a mix of small and mid-sized companies. And I really felt that there was a need for a law firm dedicated to servicing those clients and not having them sprinkled in among the really big banks and the really big institutions. And then from a personal perspective, I was starting to really burn out, and I thought there was a better way to be an attorney and to run a firm. And again, it's absolutely David and Goliath. They're doing a great job. They have offices in 60 plus cities. So I learned a lot there. It is the biggest, it is a household name, but I felt for myself and the clients that I wanted to work with, there was a better way to do it. And so
I wanted to dig down a little bit deeper onto some of the differences. So if there's a lawyer out there who's working for a big law firm right now, they don't know what they don't know. What I mean by that is I've worked for Fortune 100, Fortune 500, and I've worked for startups. And as we all know, there's advantages and disadvantages to both. So for someone who's getting that niggling and they're thinking, all right, I may want to do something else, can you explain the difference of maybe the advantages and disadvantages of this big law firm? And then on the inverse side, starting your own company, why you wanted to do that? What forced you into this is the reason that I really want to start my own firm?
yeah, on the burnout perspective, I started thinking about maybe applying elsewhere. The firm had offices in different cities. I'm based in New York, and that's hustle culture and not known for its flexible hours. And that's not all of what I was looking for, but I think that when exploring other firms and other firm cultures, I really felt like what I wanted didn't exist. And so you have to build it if it doesn't exist elsewhere. And obviously, I didn't interview at every other firm. I haven't worked at every other firm, but from what I saw talking to colleagues, there was nothing like what my partner and I had envisioned in our minds. In terms of the other part of your question, the pros and cons, there are so many pros to being at a firm with someone else's name on it. My husband and I are now both small business owners, so we had to provide health insurance for ourselves as opposed to having it through an employer. You pay yourself last when it's your firm, and I was quite comfortable getting a steady paycheck every 2 weeks. There's also, when my partner and I started, it was just two of us, and there's not a lot of people to bounce ideas off of, the infrastructure, some of the training that's available. But one thing my brother-in-law told me when I was toiling with the idea of, can I do this? And look at all the things I'm giving up, is he said, there's nothing that an employer can give you that you can't give yourself. You can purchase health insurance. You can get a like-minded group of people and form a brain trust, which we have done. You can become a subject matter expert on your own things. And so that really changed the way that I thought about it. I wasn't giving up all of these things. I was rebuilding all of these things in exactly the way I wanted them to be.
And when you decided to take the leap, so you're looking over the edge, you're looking at all of your options, and now you're actually going to jump. When is that when Shireen becomes involved, or was that later on in the process to help figure out what you wanted to lay out as your law firm in your vision?
Yes, excuse me. So we have to fast forward about 5 years before Shireen comes in. My partner and I were really lucky. We had steady incremental growth for the first 4 or 5 years. All of the employees that we hired initially were sort of known quantities, people we had worked with before and who were looking for a change or had gone elsewhere and wanted to get back into law. And we were spoiled. We were just growing steadily up this sort of very comfortable pace. And then it's hard to describe growth as a bad thing because it certainly isn't. But we started to feel like our hours, the team's hours, were recreating what we left, which was never the goal. Obviously, everybody works hard. It's still a law firm. It's still based in New York City, but we wanted to have a little more flexibility and some of the things that you can't get at a giant corporate firm. And it was starting to feel like that again. And we knew that we needed.
Let me interrupt you just for a second, because I think you just hit something is probably the biggest fear of someone starting their own law firm is, where are my clients going to come from? How am I going to pay my bills? So what did that look like when you jumped over and started your own business? Was it next day you started getting new clients, a couple of weeks, couple of months? And then how did you start to build that up? Is if I'm looking at it from an attorney's perspective, it's like, all right, day one, I open up my shop. Day two, where is the finances coming from? Where's the revenue coming from?
Absolutely. So obviously that was a big concern for both of us. We both went into this knowing that we probably weren't going to be making money for a little while and making sure that we had the resources tucked away to be able to sustain the firm. We were as lean can be. We were two people in a one desk at a, not exactly a WeWork, but that type of space. We really bootstrapped in the beginning. And this is not a false sense of humility. And I hate that this surprised us, but clients came with us when we left. So clients don't belong to a firm. We were their attorneys. We were their daily point of contact. And when clients ultimately learned that we were leaving and either asked about where we were going or found out later, clients sought us out in many instances and wanted to work with us. That's not true of all of the clients that we service, certainly. And one thing I want to pause on, before we did any of this, we hired ethics counsel. And I think if anybody asks me what's the best piece of advice, that I'm leaving a big firm and I'm starting a small firm and I have a book of business that I feel like might come with me, hire ethics counsel. We knew exactly what we could do, what we couldn't do. We made sure that we stayed completely above board, but that we were able to go to bat for ourselves and say, listen, I'm not going to hide the fact that we're leaving to start our own firm doing the same thing. If clients are interested in that information, I'm going to pass along my contact info. And that was not an easy conversation. And there's a lot more behind the scenes. But the biggest takeaway is you never know. Clients think of you as the attorney and they're not so married to the name on the letterhead. And we found that out and we were pleasantly surprised. And so we were very fortunate that we were able to start with clients. And the way our firm works is most of our clients are companies because we do corporate immigration. And so we had a stream of recurring business in the beginning that was able to sustain us as we grew.
And what was that growth piece like? So you're obviously used to doing the work. You're servicing the client, but setting up accounting, setting, a payment system, hiring people. This is all the new piece. On one end, you're doing exactly what you want to do. And on the other end, you're building up a law firm. Can you describe how that transition happened? And was it 80-20 or 20-80 with where you were spending your time?
Yeah. So it was just my partner, Sarah, and I. We were doing all of the work. We were doing all of the things. We you said earlier, you don't know what you don't know. And we tried to be really thoughtful about this and seek out an accountant and do the things that we were supposed to do. There were definitely missteps. So we incorporated in 2014, but didn't open the firm's doors until January of 2015, and didn't know that we were supposed to file a tax return in 2014. There were definitely obstacles along the way, nothing horrific. The bulk of our time was doing the work and servicing those clients that were put their faith in us to leave the world's biggest law firm and work with the world's smallest law firm. And so that's really where we focused our energy and efforts. And then our growth, and again, we got really lucky. And I think, again, we're good attorneys. We were good at what we were doing, but a lot of this is luck. There's a lot of good attorneys that will hang a shingle and not have the same thing happen. Our corporate contact at company A would move over to company B and say, hey, I want to work with you. And so our growth is an overused term, but was super organic in that way. And thankfully, because we didn't have time to be doing marketing and those things. So we were outsourcing the things we knew we didn't know how to do, accounting and all of that, doing the work ourselves, face of the firm, point of contact, trying to network and develop business. But that really took a back burner to doing a great job for the clients that we had.
Like,
And
if I
sure,
may
go
say,
ahead, Shireen.
Dana's being a little humble here. There is luck, but you also create your own luck. And the service that this firm provides speaks for itself. And so that was the main attractor and the reason the clients wanted to move. It was, of course, familiarity, but also they have a unique leverage model. And so they have more attorneys per paralegal than that larger firm. And that allows them to be able to provide a level of service and high touch that you just don't get at a larger shop.
Thank you for
And
saying that, Shireen. Yeah, that's always been our North Star, is just being the best at client service, obviously doing a good job with the cases we're being paid to handle. But that's not the hard part. The hard part was being super responsive and being available and meeting clients at their level of knowledge. So that was, again, the biggest priority for us, and something that I do think my partner and I do exceptionally well. Thank you for saying it, Shireen.
It's
And
true.
when would you say you realized that you needed some outside help? And specifically, Shireen, what were some of the things that you were experiencing where you said, okay, I need someone else who's got the expertise to help me figure this out, as opposed to just trying to wear all the hats?
So we dabbled in it a little bit early on. And at a networking event, there was a coach or a consultant or whoever, we'd meet them, we'd have a phone call, and we knew that we didn't know everything, certainly. And we just found that a lot of the people that we were encountering in this area didn't know law. So the advice we were getting was, oh, increase productivity by muting your inbox. Our entire ethos was answering emails almost immediately. Like it just wasn't working for us as a law firm. And I think when we hit around year 5 and we started hiring a little more rapidly, so our clients were growing, we wanted to be scalable. We wanted to make sure that we were able to take on new clients, start doing a little more of working on the business, to use that phrase, than in the business. And we knew we needed people to be doing the work. And I think up until that point, we were pretty easily able to communicate what was in our head when we started the firm, and the vision for the firm and the exceptional client service model. These people knew us, or we were working at a slower pace. And when things started picking up and we were hiring multiple attorneys, multiple paralegals at once, we realized that we needed help effectively communicating to our employees the sort of the why behind everything we're doing, and getting these really nice buzzwordy ideas that we had when we started the firm, work when you work best and self-managed PTO, putting policies behind them. And I read a Law 360 article that happened to be written by Shireen, and it was on, I think, maximizing law firm profitability and growth. And my partner and I sat and talked through the article, and I was like, this is phenomenal. And then through happenstance, I met Shireen at a separate event not so long after. And I remembered her from her little picture in the Law 360 article. And we chatted, we had a call. She came to our office, and we knew we had finally found the person because she is an attorney, and she's worked at law firms, and she's worked as a COO for big firms that really understood what we needed as a small but growing law firm. And it was a match made in heaven.
Thanks, Dana. Yeah, it was. Eric, did you have specific questions that you wanted?
No, I was just going to pitch it over to you, and I'd love to hear this story from your side because, and I do think it's important maybe you share a little bit of your background because it's so important in how you look at and service your clients. Is you have this background in big law, working for large companies, and I think are a great tool for someone like Dana to help pick out the best pieces of those big law and only incorporate those while throwing some of the other things to the wayside.
Yeah. So my background first is it's pretty diverse. So I started my first 10 years in the AmLaw 100. So in big law too, as a litigator. So I do know what it is to do the work, pitch the work, collect for the work, etc. And then I pivoted. I went into strategy and operations, and shortcutting it, I ran a division of KPMG, did change management for BDO, built the growth division of a communications consulting firm, but was also the COO of a national law firm where I helped them to pivot given rapid growth. And so what Dana's firm, DNS, was going through was something I see a lot. And it's just the classic problem of scale. You have a business owner that comes from large enterprise and says, we're going to do it differently. And we want to have a level of flexibility and freedom in this business. And we don't want to be like those big firms we came from. But then as they grow, they start realizing, wait a second, all those processes are necessary. But then it feels that the python of process is squeezing down on creativity, thinking about bespoke client solutions, being thoughtful about what one client needs versus another. And so the pendulum sort of swings too far the other way. And now you feel like you've become everybody else. And Dana and her partner, Sarah, were caught in that purgatory of we don't want to put in all of that process. But at the same time, things like self-managed PTO or work when you want to work, they sound good in theory, but not everybody interprets them the same way. And so how do we work together as a firm to keep those ethos? And you asked a great question, which was how much of your time in the business is being spent on the client work versus running? Is it 80-20? When I got there, Dana and Sarah, it was 80-80. They were on all cylinders, completely filled. Calendar is like insane. And so it was really a point of we need to be able to do this better. And the it in particular was how do we give more autonomy to the employees to do the work and not have to be in the middle of everything. And so the point on flexibility was very important to keep, but we had to bring accountability into it because the accountability allows for flexibility and lets one person's flexibility not impact somebody else's, right? So we created what I call a brand promise. It's something I've done for a few firms. It's a way of going beyond values and instead getting down to here's what you get, here's what we provide to you, and how these things work together. And so one very simple example of that is nobody likes timekeeping. I don't care what firm you're in. I've never met anyone who enjoys it. I've never met a firm with 100% compliance. It's always the thorn in somebody's side. But we tied it to the notion of this is a fully remote firm, and we have to have some amount of visibility into what attorneys and paralegals are doing. Otherwise, we can't give that level of flexibility. And so when you tie the promises together, it creates more of a framework. And then we also built out trainings that sort of showed, what do these tenets look like in real life? It's one thing to say, let's treat clients like VIPs. What does that really mean? Let's walk through real examples. And look, the starting point for this was the employees. I first met with them, talked to them, got their point of view, made sure we understood, do you have any pain points, or where's their confusion? Where do you feel you're not able to deliver the way the partners are envisioning? And so how do we bridge that gap and make sure these are promises that go back and forth so everybody's getting what they need for a cohesive workplace?
Yeah, I think everything you said makes perfect sense. And then you have to pair that with the person you're hiring. And what I mean by that is, and I'd love to hear both of your takes on how you would screen people. I'll give you a quick example. So I had started my own agency back in 2009, and I ended up hiring an account manager from a previous job that was really good. He was really great at what he did. And then the second week on the job, I saw a Facebook post of him at the pool in the middle of the day on Tuesday, and also not getting his job done. And I was like, okay, some people might work better in a office environment where they show up at 9 and they leave at 5. And some people might not be able to handle the freedom of working from home and setting your own schedule. So really curious, in a fast growing law firm like yours, how was that hiring process happening where you could feel confident? Because if you're at a 500 person law firm hiring one bad employee, okay. If you're at a small law firm, one bad hire, big deal.
Yeah, well, the screening process wasn't effective. We were dealing with exactly what you were dealing with, and it was exacerbated by our own policies. So if we're telling people, we want you to have the flexibility. If you have a doctor's appointment in the middle of the day, go to the doctor's appointment and then just get on earlier, stay on later if you need to finish your work. Like, we just wanted everybody to be treated like adults. And there were definitely people that took that and decided to go on poolside in the middle of the day, and not poolside with their laptop on a secure server. And we were getting really close to throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So we were committed to remaining post-COVID permanent hybrid remote. So we have an office that we upgraded to make it a nice place that people would want to come to. But we only require staff to come in 1 to 2 days a week. So 3 to 4 days a week, they're left to their own devices, quite literally. And we learned really quickly that in addition to communicating these policies more clearly and the asterisks that accompany them, work when you work best, but you need to be accessible to clients during normal business hours. And if you have a doctor's appointment, let us know. We didn't know that we needed to say those things. We have since learned that we need to say those things. Our screening process has evolved a lot, thanks in part to the work that we did with Shireen. We talk about the brand promise initially. We don't want to oversell the firm. We don't want anyone leaving a big firm coming here because they're super burned out and they don't think they're going to have to work hard. We have clients that demand excellence and deserve excellence, and that is the baseline requirement at this firm. And so communicating what the firm really is and what it isn't is a big thing. We also implemented a screening test, and we're not having people spend hours writing up an H-1B visa. If you're in immigration law, you know how to do that. But we have them explain things to a client with limited immigration experience, because that's a lot of our clients. They don't have a full-time in-house person dealing with their immigration matters. It's the CEO or the general counsel or the HR generalist. And so we say, hey, explain that, this person reached out to you, respond to them as if they have very limited knowledge of immigration, and then do the same thing for a big client where they have an in-house person, they have a lot of knowledge. And that has been a game changer in terms of that small thing that is so important to our clients, is being able to understand what we're saying to them and not have legalese and CYAs and all of that. We really refined the hiring process, and we have a really great team now. And I'm super, super proud of that. And I'm grateful to them because Shireen said, without them, Sarah and I are doing everything. And so that was super important to us. It's still a work in progress. We have found that checking references no one's going to go out on a limb and say, this person is terrible, don't hire them. So we had to find sort of unique ways to screen applicants to see if they're going to be a fit for the DNS firm culture.
Is there any characteristic that you look for? Because we are in this post-COVID world where people just expect to work from home now. Is there anything, and I love the hiring tests that you have, being able to write to two different audiences, being in marketing myself, a lot of the stuff that's done digitally is really esoteric. And if you start talking with all this jargon to someone, you lose them almost immediately. But I'm curious to know what other things you look for that can help to ensure success. You're never going to about a thousand with this, but questions that you may ask, or is there specific experience that you look for in an employee that you say, okay, I'm 80% sure this person is going to be a really good fit?
What I found interestingly is a lot of times it's the questions they ask. We don't have a faux self-managed PTO policy. We want people to take breaks. We have in our handbook the expected minimums that we want people to take. This is not meant to be a ploy to have people not use their vacation time. Everybody burns out. I take vacation. My partner takes vacation. But sometimes the questions that people ask us or the reasons they tell us they want to leave their current firm, I don't like time tracking. We time track. I'm expected to stay till 7 or 8 some nights. That happens here. There's no FaceTime. You don't have to stay later because Sarah happens to be in the office still. You go home if you finished your work or you want to log on. Again, a lot of times people are remote. We don't know what time they're leaving. So listening to the applicant and not doing as much talking has been really helpful, and getting a sense of what they're looking for and being honest with ourselves as to whether we can deliver that. Because we are a boutique firm and we, try to be a little different than the corporate behemoths. We're based in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. We have some cooler clients, but we also have hedge funds and fintech companies. And so finding someone that can toe the line in between, and like Shireen said, the flexible accountability is really exactly what we're trying to find.
And I think it's equally important. It's okay not to be for everybody. And I think something we learned through this process of putting in the brand promise and then using it for hiring, I was really happy. Dana and Sarah were also really transparent when we presented it to the current employees in saying, think about this. And if this doesn't resonate with you and it's not what you're looking for in a career, that's okay. Come to us and tell us, and we'll help you find something that's a better fit for you. We're not going to throw you out tomorrow, but we expect everybody to sign on to this. And so it's equally helpful with newer employees too. Somebody can be great at the work, but if they're not going to fit into this ethos, it really is flexible accountability where one person abusing it can affect somebody else's ability to take it. For this to be a working ecosystem, there has to be that trust.
One other thing I'd like to hear your side on, Shireen, would be when Dana's jump over to starting this law firm, you're so in the work. You're just every day there's 24 hours of work to do or more and not enough time to do it. So
Yeah.
second set of eyes like yours come and look at it from, say, a 10,000-foot view. What were some of the things that really stuck out to you right away that says, okay, we need to pull this lever, we need to push this button, and we're going to get things really humming so Dana has more time to do what she wants to do and the company operates more efficiently overall?
Yeah, it was a few things. One, it was very clear the partners still felt they had to jump in and be in the weeds. And so that was impacting their ability to work on the business and do other things. And part of it's psychological, right? It's feeling more that your employees are empowered to do it, but it's empowering them. And so part of what we did with the brand promise was put in place standards, and it's context, not control, right? You have to pick the few things that must be zero defect. And as way of example, the conflicts checking system at any law firms, that has to be zero defect, right? That's an ethics issue. You have to get it right, and there's no wiggle room. But for a lot of things, what does it mean to get to somebody right away? What is VIP service? What is writing to the right audience? And what does that look and feel like? What is checking your work or looking at resources on your own before you go to the partner and ask them for help? We wanted to really break that down. And so we did, and we taught it in 30-minute tutorials. That fits with attention spans, let's be honest. People don't want to sit through a 2-hour webinar. And it was very workshop style, right? So it was 15 minutes of real digging into documents and showing examples, and then 15 minutes of Q&A. And so from that, employees can get a real view of what good looks like. We also tagged the employees to do the trainings. So it wasn't just Dana and Sarah, but we would pick people who happened to be good at specific skill sets and said, you lead the training, further empowering them. So that was one area. Another was, it's a real testament to how the firm operates and how great their service is. They were based all referral. And so something we are working on now is business development, right? And having a more proactive business development engine. And that's the type of thing. Almost every small business goes through this. I also suffer from it from time to time. It's the work gets busy and you turn the faucet off on BD. And then this starts to happen and you're like, uh-oh, better turn it back on. And so it's helping you to find easy, repeatable things that you can stick to a cadence. So that's another area that we're exploring and looking into.
Yeah, I think tapping the attorneys who excelled in the specific areas to lead the workshops and the training was really great. We didn't want to be talking at them, especially things that were a little more nuanced, like this is when you should come to us for guidance, because we learned that maybe you understand it. We understood our policies. We understood the why behind them. But if they're not being communicated effectively, it's going to sound bad. So we didn't want to go to the employees and say, don't ping us during the day, or don't email us during the day, or don't have us review every email that you send out. Rather, empowering them to know that there are resources other than us that can be tapped before that, but that we're always here. We really are always here. Busy times, we're busy. We're not a do as I say, not as I do type of firm. And that was really important to us as well, sort of towing that line between empowering them and not making them feel like they were out on their own or doing something wrong, because that really wasn't it. And it's helped a lot. And we incorporated a lot of these things into our actual annual reviews. Reflecting on the annual reviews, we were like, what do these things mean? Your meets expectations, goes above expectations. And the fact that we had actually communicated the expectations at this firm and what going above baseline is and what baseline is, and that baseline is excellent, people are going to be less confused by their reviews, meets expectations. So we overhauled that as well. And on the business development side, we were super passive because all of our time had been taken by being in the weeds on every case, every email, every matter. And it's still our firm and we're still growing it and helping cultivate its growth and the growth of our team members. But we needed to be able to take a step back we're responsible for 11 people's salaries and making sure that we're not just sitting there resting on our laurels, hoping someone moves from company A and goes to company B, and that's how we're going to land our next client. And getting the infrastructure in place to allow us to take some time to focus on business development was critical.
And one other big key to this, which I think is very common with starting up a law firm, is starting it with a partner. Can you describe how you would separate work, or did you not? Were you both working on the same things in the beginning, or do you really find things that you're good at, things that your partner are good at, to manage separately? And how did that change or progress over time?
Yes, Sarah and I worked together at the firm that we left. We were on the same team and we're friendly, but not best friends. It was still very much a work relationship, which I think was important. I'm sure there's a lot of friends that go into business together and are super successful. We liked each other, but it was always, pretty professional. And when we started toying with the idea of going out on our own, and it was helpful, she was noticing things and I was like, I felt that way too, but you feel validated that it's not you being ungrateful for your 6-figure salary at this nice office. You were like, oh, there are some things that could be done different and could be done better. And we're not crazy to throw it all away and start at zero. But working with a partner is incredibly challenging. And I am fortunate that we didn't read any of the statistics about how many partnerships dissolve when we first went into this. We were a little clueless about that. That was a good thing that we didn't know. But we had to really work on our relationship and our business relationship. And I would say hire ethics counsel, piece of advice number one. But if you're doing this with a partner, make sure that you are working with someone who can help you navigate what that looks like. And fortunately for Sarah and I, we have really complementary strengths, but they're different. And so, I'll have a really big idea and Sarah's, okay, let's bring you down to earth a little bit. Here's how we're going to have to execute this. And it's just worked incredibly well for us. And we're going to be celebrating a decade of DNS in January. And we're super proud of that. And obviously growth brings new challenges. And I think tip number 3 would be, don't be afraid to ask for help. And going to Shireen, and the firm was successful. So it was strange for us to be like, we need help. We need an external person to come in and help us be even better. And that's really how we thought of it. And I think it's definitely helped improve the things that we were struggling with and allowed us to focus on making even greater improvements and making the firm even better.
Yeah, Shireen, I'd love to hear from your perspective when you first came in, how you saw both of the partners, and did you not give responsibility to, but did you recognize these differences in strengths and say,
Yeah.
this is where you should focus, Dana, and Sarah, this is where you should focus, and walk us through how you were able to divide so that the work was much more efficient?
Yeah, it was really clear from the beginning. And in fact, it was clear because they were clear with me from the beginning on. Dana is more like the ideation person, and Sarah's who you go to actually execute on the ground and get things done. And so it made my job easier because there wasn't some struggling dynamic of why aren't you including me or why aren't we doing this? It's also a lot of times I email the two of them and whoever wants to answer answers, and that works fine. And the other one's at least in the loop. So if I'm dealing with Sarah on getting something done, at least Dana's aware and she may have another idea. And vice versa. If I'm talking to Dana, Sarah may say, yeah, but we need to do it this way. And that makes sense too.
Yeah, I think, because I myself, as I mentioned back in 2009, had a partner and we were both really good at really different things. And I think that's a key for a partnership. But I also think both people are going to have to, both or 3 or 4, whatever the partnership, are going to have to do things that they don't like. How do you deal with that? Meaning your strength may be over here, her strength is over here, but there's this piece in the middle that no one really wants to do, that no one's really that good at. How do you figure out who's going to take responsibility so that all the work gets done the way that it needs to?
Yeah. So Sarah vetoed my idea of rock, paper, scissors for those things. I would say that there are
Arm wrestling, is
definitely,
that what you did
yeah,
instead?
I was just, you took the words right out of my mouth, Eric. So we really support each other in, hey, you're drowning right now. I'm going to pick up the slack and I'm going to handle the admin and I'm going to do the call with the CFO and vice versa. I'm going to work on getting this new regulation published on our website because you're drowning. And we have avoided the resentment of someone's busier because it ebbs and flows. It's sometimes my clients are more active and sometimes her clients are more active, and making sure that we're both stepping up when we can. And then I think the sort of other side of that is if there's something that someone is really good at and the other person is not as good at and also hates, letting the other person just be the person that does that thing. You're better at it and you don't mind it. And there are definitely times over the years where we've had to take a step back. It's so easy to look at what you're doing as the most important thing. But if you really realize, yeah, maybe the admin or the blog post isn't the thing that's moving the needle on the bottom line, but it needs to get done and you don't want to do it. And you have someone who cares as much about this firm doing those things for you. to me, a part really rewarding. And I can't imagine having done it on my own and not having someone to bounce ideas off of, having left such a big firm where there was a ton of attorneys and people to talk to. So it's certainly not always easy, but I think playing to your individual strengths and then just being willing to step up when it's necessary.
Shireen, any perspective on that you can give looking at it from the outside of how to divide up the unwanted work?
Yeah, I think Dana and Sarah have been very smart. They are good at being transparent and stepping up. But also, to Dana's point, they were fine. It wasn't as if they were in shambles, but they knew they needed outside help if they wanted to get from we're doing good to but we can be better. And I think it's also figuring out for yourself, this is your business. There's no rules. There's tax rules, there's certain rules out there, but within that realm, there aren't many rules. Build it the way you want to build it and bring people in who are better at doing certain things. And so she mentioned the outsourced CFO. We worked on that together and found her a great resource who now helps her to see around corners and budget and understand what's going on. Now, of course, they knew what their budget was, but it helps to have somebody who has industry context and can look at this. And is that the highest and best use of your time? Or should you be out in the market finding the next client? And same with some of the operations, right? They were operating fine, but knowing it can be a little better, it can feel easier and a little more even keeled. It doesn't have to do this, the ebb and the flow. We can have better control of our schedules and feel that we can walk away from the business and give it to the employees and it will get done the way we would do it. That's the magic, right? And so being able to bring in the right support to get you there it's a hard thing to do, but I'm glad.
And I think doing it before we were in shambles, which is not to say that was the trajectory we were on, but I think it's sometimes hard to seek out help, spend resources, time, money, etc., when you're not in desperate need. When you're in desperate need, you'll write the check, you'll spend it, you have to do it. But doing it when, again, going back to that sort of niggling sense of something isn't feeling right, and I think there are ways to improve this, was really important to us. And I'm happy we did it when we did it, and that we're still working with Shireen and still improving processes and doing it incrementally where it didn't feel like this huge overhaul. The first employee we ever hired is still working with us. And we obviously, the North Star is excellent service to our clients, but we also want to be a fantastic place to work for our employees. And having that third party, that 10,000 foot view who can say, here's what this looks like from an outsider. You may think this is great, but was just really critical.
So we're just about out of time, but I'd like to give each of your perspective, and I'll start with Shireen here, on any advice that you'd give to an attorney who's listening to this, that's working for big law or working for another law firm that their name is not on, and they're considering making this jump. What advice would you give them? And it could be full A to Z or just the first initial steps to consider to help ensure that they'll be successful when they start their own firm.
Great question. I think some of the things Dana mentioned are critical. And so have an emergency fund, have a cushion. This stuff does not happen overnight. And in fact, if you build it right, it probably won't happen overnight. The fast, easy way is usually not the right way. And so give yourself the room to do it the way you know it needs to be done properly. And from the beginning, think about the business development engine. Don't spend too much time on the fluff. And what I mean by that is, it is okay to, at least, especially in nowadays, you don't need an office. There's a lot you don't need. It is easier than ever to start your own practice. And something you can do is speak to somebody, whether it's someone like me, someone like even an incorporation expert, but just get that checklist and understand what it is to get this started and up and running well, and create for yourself a timeline. And whether it's from flipping the switch on LinkedIn, What is my announcement to the market going to be the first time? How am I going to start hitting the pavement for the client? Get it all calendared and ready before you leave the security of the W-2 paycheck.
Excellent advice. Dana?
I agree with all of that. In addition to the things that I mentioned, if you're leaving a big firm, hiring ethics counsel, getting outside guidance and all of that, really reflect on whether you want to be a business owner, whether you want to run a business, because I'm not just a lawyer anymore. I'm not just an attorney. I'm not just servicing clients. And if I didn't want to do those things that are already difficult, the business development and all of those things that don't come naturally and they don't to everyone and they don't teach you in law school, this would be even more difficult. So really self-reflect on that. And then I think proactively piggybacking on what Shireen said, Sarah and I did a lot of things before we had a single employee. We put an employee handbook. We made workflows and training materials and all of these things because we knew early on when the phones weren't ringing off the hook, was when we would have time to work on those things. And they proved invaluable. Following on what Shireen said, put infrastructure in place that maybe you don't need right now, but you will need eventually if your plan is to grow. That was really helpful to us.
Ladies, I can't thank you enough for spending time helping to educate the audience on something that would be a major life decision. Any place that people can reach out to you if they've got questions, whether they need a immigration attorney or Shireen, if they need some business coaching, where they can find you.
For better or worse, Sarah and I have last names. They're both a mouthful, but you can reach me at dana@dsimmigration.com. And the law firm is DiRaimondo and Schroeder LLP.
And you can reach me for operations and strategy support at mayorconsultants.com. Mayor is MAIOR, consultants with an S, or Shireen at mayorconsultants.com. And Shireen is SHIREEN.
Thanks, Sarah.
And of course, and for anybody listening, all that contact info will be in the show notes to make it easy for you. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.